I retrobright my joystick. All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
The joy of a decent stick. Kempston did not create the Competition Pro.
Tales of the Unexplained.
Not too bright. We discuss if retrobrighting damages plastics.
And we remember a voiceover legend and learn how to homebrew a very retro storage medium coming up on this week's show for the week of the 6th of December 2025.
Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.
Hello everyone, welcome to another show. We have a guest on with us, all the way
We've got two
from
guests.
two guests. Yes. Hello.
He's knocked my headphones off. 2 seconds in,
Yes.
look at that.
Got
Cats
the
everywhere.
compulsory cat. Fantastic.
Welcome
great.
to the show, Allan,
This is-
also known as Happy Coding ZX, all the way from, is it sunny in Kazakhstan? All the way from sunny Kazakhstan, let's call
It's
it.
December
Imagine
in
it's always sunny
Siberia.
in
What do you
Kazakhstan.
think?
All the way from cold, shivery Kazakhstan.
Yeah, normally it's
You're not
about
cold.
minus 15 at this time of year, but actually it's more or less zero. So it's t-shirt weather for us.
Right, taps
Wow.
off.
Yeah, very mild so far.
He's been on the show before, Allan. People,
Yeah, it's about
may or
1
may
year.
not
I
have seen
think
that
more,
episode.
almost exactly 1 year. Yeah.
It is timed deliberately, though, because you've got something. Hello, Alice. You've got something you'd like to tell us about. Tell us about your project, Allan. What is it?
Well, you mean the charity project, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so I run a little software business. Like, we publish games every year, and we published about nearly 30 titles now. And it started off just myself and my friend Andy, but then other friends kind of got involved. And so last year we had quite a few titles, and we thought, wouldn't it be nice what should we do with the digitals? Because we mainly focus on physicals. And so people were asking for the digitals. I mean, the thing is, the physicals have kind of unique digitals with them, because they're kind of upgraded, like extra music or extra levels or stuff like this. So that,
And we should say that these are ZX Spectrum games
yeah.
that have been created in the past few years. They're modern homebrew games.
Yeah. So people were asking for the digitals. They were only available through the physical or through my Patreon, but I said, come on, let's just give them all to charity. Why don't we do that for at least for a month, and then people can get them, right? So, and this is always in November that we do a big release. It ties in with Crash 2025, where I do a talk and I come to the UK and I get to meet everyone. So I said, let's just release our whole digital catalog for charity for a month. And let's try and get a lot more people involved. So last year it was a bit like, remember the old cassette 50? It was like a digital version of that, only the games weren't.
But crap. Good. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that was that. And then it went really well. We made about £3,500, sold about 200 of the set. So that was, pretty good. And then about 2 or 3 days ago, I thought, well, maybe we should do it again. Pretty busy time for me. So when I wasn't necessarily planning on it, but then I thought, no, come on, we should do it, because we've added another 12 titles to Midnight Brew, and I'm sure I can get a few more. So yeah, we've got 64 titles on it this year. So it's the same as last year. You've got the same ones from last year, but there's another 16 titles in total. So it was 48, and then it was now 64. So there's more titles, and it's only 16 quid for 64 games, right? So it's a nice price. And even if you bought them last year, you're still getting something this year, even for that price, I think. But I think,
And the money's going to charity, of course.
Yeah,
so
yeah. It's 100%.
there.
It's 100%. It's not profit going to charity. It's 100% going to charity. Like every penny that you pay, if you pay 16 quid, I'm paying 16 quid to the charity. So,
And this is available now then?
Yep, it's online. It's on if you go to midnightbrewgames.com, it'll link to the Ko-Fi page. That's probably the easiest one to remember. Yeah. And you can find it. Yeah,
Link in the show notes for it. Link in the show notes.
Thanks for...
So welcome to the show.
Mm-hmm.
How are the rest of you been, Jason and Chris? You all right?
Yeah, Jason's doing fine.
Yeah, bit warm. It's 9
Yeah.
o'clock. Well, 9:20 at night, and it's still 27 degrees. So.
Baking hot in Australia. Well, let's go. We've got.
No, I was just about to say, you know that we're in 4 different continents, right? Isn't that exciting?
Yeah, it's a good point. We are.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, really, really spread out right across the world.
Yeah.
All we need someone from Hawaii, who I'm sure it'd be the middle of the night for them, and would be fine. What if I told you that everything you know about joysticks is a lie? Well, Morpheus didn't quite say that in The Matrix. In fact, he didn't even say that line in The Matrix. It's one of these weird misquoted lines that we all thought we heard that he didn't say at all. But what I thought about the most iconic of the second wave of joysticks in the UK is wrong. On the subreddit this week was a video from a YouTube channel that I've not seen before called Hot Dog Soup. In fact, I've never even eaten hot dog soup before. So thanks to FAC191 for linking it. The video is called Who Created the Competition Pro? And FAC191 has added in brackets, it wasn't Kempston. And that's what caught my eye because I thought it was Kempston. I'm going to try and not spoil the whole video because it is worth watching. I don't want to take that pleasure away from you. But it kept my attention right to the end. It's a really good video. It's packed with actual information, research, and even interviews that Martin, also known as Hot Dog Soup, has done. Kempston are a pretty famous company in the UK for a certain period of time because they created a joystick interface for the ZX Spectrum. There we go. That's Chris holding one up to the screen. It's the little thing hanging out the back of there because, for some reason, the ZX Spectrum was designed without a joystick interface, or at least the original ones were, not the plus twos and so on. And Kempston came out with a joystick interface, and in fact, almost all ZX Spectrum games after that gave the option to have Kempston joystick. He goes on to explore who made it, and it turns out it wasn't made by Kempston. Kempston just marketed in the UK once it was made by 2 guys, one from the Netherlands and one from the USA. And funny enough, the one from the USA is a guy, Mr. Happ. And it turns out Mr. Happ I knew of already because of a different thing. Bat top arcade sticks, which are also called Happ sticks. Those are the ones, rather than the ball, it's the kind of bat top, which is supposedly the American style of arcade machines. I didn't know there was a distinction, but I prefer those. I think they're much better. And his Happ company is synonymous with them. But for me, the Competition Pro represents the second wave of home joysticks in the UK. And this will be another case of where things are different in the UK than they are in the USA. And I hope Jason can give us some enlightenment later on. In the UK, we started off with the worst joysticks that anyone could imagine. The Atari CX40 may not be the most ergonomic joystick to hold, but it's not terrible. They first started with an all-plastic construction, which they got rid of soon. And they improved the construction, I think, and they had these blister switches initially for a short period, I believe, and they got rid of them quickly because they were so unreliable. In the UK, joystick manufacturers said, no, these blister switches are perfect. That's what we want. We want blister switches in our joysticks. So our first wave of joystick in the UK were these horrible, creaky plastic things that if they didn't physically break, the switches on them would break. Terrible things. And it was only when we got this second wave of joysticks, and for me, it was actually a zip stick, not a Competition Pro, but they look very similar. For me, it was a zip stick that came out that was miles better. It was a revelation compared to the horrible sticks that we had. The really only difference between the Competition Pro and the zip stick, apart from colours, is the zip stick has micro switches for the fire buttons rather than the leaf ones that the Competition Pro has. But my first question though is I want to bring in Jason because I know you must be jumping up and down to tell us about the differences here between what you perceive of the USA and the UK. As I understand it, these Competition Pros were not iconic in the USA as they were in the UK.
Yeah. No, I mean the Competition Pro, like it clearly existed here. It was sold here. The video has some shots of advertising for it, and they existed. It just wasn't. It wasn't a massive name here, even though Hap is this iconic contributor to all things game controllers. The Competition Pro seems fine. The ambidextrous design is nice. But to me, and I think to most Americans, North Americans, it doesn't seem like it's the most amazing thing ever, like it's often held up for in the UK. I do think that the fact that Atari was so much bigger and more entrenched here, that probably has a lot to do with, yeah, right. Like you want a joystick. Well, you may either have an Atari CX40 because the chances are pretty good you have a 2600 in addition to your computer, or
you get 6 of them.
or they're easy to acquire because there's Atari stuff, everywhere at the time. And in terms of like what the footprint of the Competition Pro and Hap's marketing of it here, like companies like Wiko were mainstream enough in the US to have broadcast TV ads. And then a little bit later, you get Epix and Mindscape licensing designs to sell under their own brands. You had specialist companies like Kraft, not the mac and cheese people, a different one, that were providing their own alternatives. So I think with all that, there's not a lot of room for the Competition Pro to become this iconic thing. But what I want to ask you guys is old hot dog soup over there. He's talking about not what you were just saying, the Arcade R stick, but something that was just called the Competition Pro Arcade stick with that single button sitting directly north of it. He claimed it was very popular, said they sold 1 million. Is this true? Are these people in therapy that like this? Because those are horrible. Horrible.
I wondered, watching the video, and I don't have any basis for this, I wondered if that's what got the company going in perhaps mainland Europe. And then when they got Kempston to market the Competition Pro, that's when they first started selling them in the UK. And we didn't see these arcade things. I mean, you're talking about the Arcade R. This is the Arcade R. It's not what you're talking about. This is almost a Competition Pro modern clone. It's a fantastic joystick. No, this arcade thing was like a cut down Competition Pro. I understand the same parts, but put down to a single button. You would hold it in your hand. And it's quite reminiscent.
A different mold. Yeah, it was a different mold. Yeah. And Commodore inflicted that design on people, I guess, after Atari went after them for cloning the CX40. They said, fine, we'll just give people something horrible. And they did. And
I've got a couple of those. They are terrible.
They're terrible.
Terrible sticks.
It's a terrible layout. So I don't fully understand what's happening here. But Competition Pro, I'm glad that they're there for people that love them.
And the one thing you haven't mentioned, is something you mentioned to me in passing, and it's about the Commodore DTV.
Right. Yeah. When that was first being designed now more than 20 years ago, I remember a lot being made by the manufacturers that were like, oh, and we've got the Competition Pro design to put in there. But for the American team that was putting it together, it was like, well, okay, good for you. But yeah, that's how that design came about. And that's why those, clones have been available, because that design was cloned, over 20 years ago and has kind of been floating around ever since.
Yeah, the Commodore DTV was the Commodore 64 built into a joystick you plugged into your TV. Fantastically popular 20 years ago. Jerry Ellsworth and all the rest of it. Great thing. Allan, you're a Spectrum man, through and through. Did you have a Competition Pro in your Spectrum? Is it in my house? Did you have a Competition Pro in your Spectrum? And are you still using joysticks now, or are you into gamepads?
Well, I tell you what, I'm known as a Spectrum guy, but I was a huge collector, especially in the early 2000s, and I pretty much had every system that you could have. I had. I'm just a gamer, and I love coding on the Spectrum, but game-wise, I usually play on other things, But yes, Competition Pro, loved it. Great, especially Sensible Soccer on the Amiga, something like that. I can certainly remember doing that. But it's definitely... And I really enjoyed the video. And what a lovely guy he was, by the way. I haven't seen his channel before, but it's I'm really interested in the evolution of joysticks. And I look back a little bit, and I know Jason mentioned Wiko, and they kind of go right back to sort of 1930s with amusement machines and pinball and all kinds of stuff. So their joystick, which was called the Wiko Red Button, was it? I can't remember. It's famous Red Ball, I think it was called. Yeah, and he mentions that in the show. But he did brush over it just a little, because that was a pretty important joystick, I would say, historically. If you think of it like evolution, that joystick is similar to the Competition Pro. It doesn't have the left and right-handedness, but it has the arcade built on arcade machines, right? And that And that red top was the one that was used in Pac-Man and Donkey Kong and, all those kind of machines.
Yeah, there was a bat handle variant of that as well.
Yeah,
so you didn't, like I said, not truly ambidextrous, but it did have the top button, which is ambi.
But do you guys know the origin of the word joystick?
No. Is this safe for work?
It is safe for work, just about.
Can we keep our YouTube ads and still explain this?
Well, controllers historically first came in, controllers for machines came in as part of the Industrial Revolution, right? Because there was mechanization and they started to need levers and various things like this, right? But true joysticks only came in when they invented aeroplanes, because that was the first time that you needed to control really in sort of three-dimensional space. So the joystick was invented in around about 1910, something like that. And these, I don't know if this is true in America, Jason, but the pilots in the First World War were very well known for being upper class, and they had a lot of their own slang, right? Sort of open the rafters, drop the, whatever it was, over the briny. I don't know if you've seen the Monty Python sketch, but
I have, yes. I actually was thinking I was wondering if we were going to get into the golden age of ballooning when we talked about when joysticks came in. So I'm glad we're on a different Python sketch.
That's how you control a balloon with a joystick.
Right. Those guys had their own little microculture, right? And they had their own language and their own talk. And somebody at some point started calling the control flight stick a joystick, right? And it was a kind of, music hall, a little bit of innuendo, a little bit of, oh, back on the joystick, chaps, down the hatch, here we go, whatever, that sort of thing. And that's where it apparently started. And it never really entered the mainstream, really, until later on when it became part of gaming, So, yeah, Chris, when you're holding your little flight stick there, not your joystick, not the one that you put hydrogen peroxide on, that's a little piece of history that goes right back to originally to flying planes. Yeah. So
did not
pretty
know
cool,
that
right?
at all. That is really cool, actually. Yeah. Especially since one of my main uses for using joysticks was flight sims.
And I know exactly. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Obviously, I watched the show, and then that's something you talk about quite a bit.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely love the flight sims.
Yeah, it's
cool.
a very, very long history. And the Kempston, it's an iconic joystick in Europe. Yes, absolutely. It's a little branch in the evolution. I remember, though, because to answer your other question, Dave, about gamepads, I remember that transition, when you had to make the transition to gamepads from joysticks. And it was like, I don't want to use this. This D-pad, But again, I could tell you there's a whole history of the D-pad as well. I mean, it goes back to Game & Watch, Nintendo's Game & Watch. So it is actually around the same time as the Competition Pro, really. Maybe even predates it a little bit. So, yeah, it's not a modern thing.
With the D-pads, I find it interesting how some games I would still prefer a joystick, and I'm thinking of arcade games. If it's a bullet hell shooter, a D-pad does not cut it.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas certain other games, I don't know, maybe playing Lotus or whatever, a D-pad actually makes it easier than I remember the game being, right? So, yeah, it's really, really weird. My history with joysticks, Spectrum Plus 3, I think, first of all, was the Cheetah 125 Plus, which wasn't a great joystick, but at least, being the Spectrum Plus 3, you had the Sinclair interface on the side. Thanks for that proprietary connector, Allan Sugar. But at least the Cheetah 125, it had both connectors, so you could use it on, an Atari or whatever, or a Commodore 64 with the black plug, or you use the grey plug in the Sinclair machines. So that worked well until it broke, which of course they always did. And actually, in the Cheetah's defense, other than it being a cheaply made, creaky piece of rubbish, at least it has a thumb fire button, a trigger fire button, and two base fire buttons. So it's good for like flight sims because of the trigger button, but it's also good for shooters. Yeah, they all do the same thing, but I'm talking about the orientation of them. It's good for if you're into an arcade shooter, then you can do that equally as well. So it's not a bad design, and very few joysticks feature both sets of buttons. Once I got up to the Amiga, though, I mean, ours came with they threw in a QuickShot 2, which had those leaf switches you were talking about earlier, Dave, which, they were great until they weren't. And then after that, it was an assortment of other QuickShot or QuickJoy flight sticks that they all looked cool and they made you feel like Tom Cruise while flying a flight sim. Even though they weren't analog, they were still digital. But they were great until they broke. And those, they were into the micro switch era, right? They had micro switches, but the springs that activated the micro switch was rubbish. And so maybe it was my ham-fistedness or whatever, but I'd just snap those springs. And so I ended up with like one working joystick, which was made of a collection of working springs from other joysticks. It would take three broken joysticks to keep one working, and that's how it ended up going for me. Until, similar to you, Dave, I got the zip stick. And if it was a flight stick, if it was a flight sim, I still wouldn't use a zip stick because I want that trigger fire button because my other hand is all over the keyboard, right? But if it's a driving game or a platformer or a shooter, then the zip stick was absolutely fantastic, and I never looked back. Mainly because we never broke ours. It was, as far as I was concerned, that joystick was indestructible, right? I know people now, they're very old now and people have managed to break them, but at the time, it just seemed to last forever. And that's without me going into the oddities of my other controllers like the Bishu Zuma, which we've discussed before, or even the Sega Master System's bizarre name for a controller, but they simply called it the Sega Handle Controller. And it's basically a digital steering wheel. So it had quite a nice left and right feel, but to accelerate or brake, you had to push the whole yoke in, sort of in towards the desk and then pull it back again. But it worked on the Amiga because the pin out was pretty much the same. And yeah, so use that as well. Lots of joysticks.
Yeah.
Do you hold it in your hand,
lots-
your joystick? I mean, your quick shot.
Often, yes.
Your quick shot.
Holding it right
no,
now.
your competition pro. Do you hold it in your hand or do you put it on the table? That's what I wanted to ask.
As far as I'm concerned, and again, for me, I think this comes back from playing flight sims, but it has to have good suction cups and it has to be firmly on a flat desk so that it doesn't move. Arcade stick inclusive, because even if you're playing Lotus, as far as I'm concerned, if the joystick base moves, that's kind of lag, if you want to put it that way. You know, the device has moved before the switch is activated, and therefore that's a form of latency, right? And if you're playing flight sims, literally one hand is all over the keyboard, the other hand is on your joystick. So if that thing's falling off the table or moving around, it just doesn't work. So it has to be stuck to the desk.
Jason, do you have? Are you a hand man or are you a table man? Would you say?
Yeah, my preferred joystick actually is the Mindscape Power Players. I forget what it was marketed as in the UK, which is it's a grip, grip for your one offhand, and then the
trigger
on the top.
Trigger on the. Yeah, I see. Sometimes I wonder because when I was a kid, I can remember playing. I always had, especially with the Atari, because you didn't have a desk. You were just sat right in front of the telly.
Yeah.
So you had to put it in your hand, right? And then you had that. Everyone had, you had that welt, like that red.
Yeah. And they didn't have suction cups on the bottom, right? As did, our first console was the Philips G7000. That didn't have suction cups either.
Yeah.
And those were terrible joysticks.
Yeah, there's so many things you can look at with joysticks. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
That video is linked in the show notes. It's a great little video, definitely worth a watch. And we'll probably make this the question of the week. But anyway, we need to move on.
Dave, we're not going to do one of those sponsor segments that everybody's heard 50 times already this year, are we?
No, we're not. No, this is a brand new sponsor section. So everybody sit down and listen attentively. This is important. We are sponsored this week by Future Vision Research. That's fvresearch.com, your trusted source for all production-ready FujiNets.
FujiNet, found at FujiNet Online, is, as you might imagine from the name, inspired by the same Mount Fuji that gave Atari its logo. FujiNet is a Wi-Fi based network adapter, plus way more loads of stuff for loads of systems. We spoke a few weeks ago about MS-DOS being added to the lineup, so that makes it the Atari 8-bits, Apple II and Apple III, Coleco, Atom, Tandy Coco, Dragon 32, and MS-DOS, more platforms on the way. It's a community as well as an add-on. The game lobby lets you play multiplayer games across platforms like 5-Car Stud, Reversi, etc. High score challenges with friends and a monthly magazine.
And if you're like me and you recently acquired an Atari 800 XL, it's something that you'd be looking into, as I am. The team at Future Vision Research works closely with the FujiNet developers to ensure the latest hardware and firmware designs. Our friends at Future Vision ship internationally, not to the EU and Northern Ireland, but they do ship to the UK and, of course, all of North America. They maintain a Substack email letter at fujinews.substack.com.
So start your journey into the world of FujiNet by visiting fvresearch.com and watch for their ad in Compute's Gazette magazine. Thank you for sponsoring us.
I'm taking a look at some tales of the unexplained this time around. I'm going to lead off with what was the most heavily upvoted story on our subreddit this week. That's reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro. It was submitted by, oh look, Pajako6502, because of course it was. And it was titled, "A 34-year-old Apple Mac crash bug, quote, would have gone undiscovered for all eternity, unquote, but the accuracy of the MAME emulator shone a light on it." Which is a chewy title. It turns out that this story had been picked up by PC Gamer and then Tom's Hardware just recently. The work was done earlier this year and documented by one Doug Brown, who works in embedded systems and Linux while also spending a lot of time on classic Macintosh projects. And this one is a real doozy, although it is honestly a bit surprising that nobody else had griped about it loudly enough to get it addressed until now. So Brown found that he could not boot an emulated Macintosh Classic 2 in full 32-bit mode in the MAME emulator because the system ROM would crash. The Classic 2, if you're not up on your Macintosh lore, it was in a form factor reminiscent of those original Mac models. So that's a small all-in-one case featuring a small monitor, which, yes, in October 1991, when it was shipped, was still monochrome. Unlike those original Macintosh models, which were powered by the original Motorola 68000 CPU, which is not a true 32-bit CPU, the Mac Classic had a 68030 on board, which is fully 32-bit. Macs of that period could boot into a 24-bit compatibility mode, but Brown wanted to test something completely unrelated in 32-bit mode, and he just couldn't get it past the startup step. What follows in his blog post is a truly remarkable piece of very minute hardware and software archaeology, in which Brown digs deeply into just how MAME is running or failing to run using the MAME's built-in debugger, and then he finds out the startup code is trying to jump to an invalid address. He gets as far as he can in MAME's tools, and then he shifts over to a real Mac Classic 2, which he had to acquire for this. And because of those machines' tendency to have rotten capacitors and or batteries, he has to hack at it, including finding a way to capture video outside of that integrated CRT that isn't working. I mean, the full technical details of what he's at are frankly over my head, but what it boiled down to was that Brown stumbles into the fact that this CAS instruction, CAS for compare and swap, CAS, is being used by the Mac ROM in a way that does not match the documentation of the 68000 CPU series, and as a result, wasn't properly emulated in MAME. I will give you Brown's full quote on this. Quote, "I've discovered an undocumented MC68030 instruction that performs a read, modify, write bus cycle and also changes the value of the A1 register. This newly discovered instruction turns out to be the glue that's accidentally holding the Classic 2 together. Without this instruction modifying A1, the Classic 2 can't boot. I'm confident that it was a mistake and not something intentional, a totally understandable mistake at that. If the pesky 68030 hadn't been hiding the bug from Apple's ROM developers, there is no doubt they would have caught it before the Classic 2 shipped." Unquote. Part of what kept this issue hidden for so long was that it wasn't that Apple's system coders were using some fancy undocumented opcode intentionally or unintentionally. There was a bug in the ROM code which caused the program on a Classic 2 to jump to the wrong memory address, but the code at that wrong address looked enough to the CPU like a valid CAS instruction that from the CPU's point of view, it did what they needed it to do and bailed them out through this weird undocumented mechanism, and so the system would continue to boot. Now, in light of all of this, MAME has been patched to work around this issue, but it looks to me like, from reading the article in the comments, that the work of fully exploring this and apparently other undocumented behaviors of the 68000 series may still be pending. So, guys, do you ever stop and wonder what other tech out there might just be barely working or work because of some crazy accident like this one?
I'm not shocked by this. I mean, you hear stories about random files that are definitely not referenced anywhere, that definitely don't do anything. And if they're removed, the whole thing stops working. And I don't know if that's true or not, or if it's kind of these apocryphal stories. But it reminds me of a book written in about 1995, I think. So this is going back a while. So it's been happening for a while, by Terry Pratchett. It's a Discworld book called Interesting Times. And they're in it there's a computer called Hex. And a mouse has made a nest inside this computer. And if they remove the mouse, for some reason, it stops the computer running. So this was already a thing around the time this undiscovered Mac bug was, not causing any problems.
Chris, Allan, do you have either your suspicions about what's held up by a set of matchsticks or just another unusual offbeat use for MAME?
My experience is when I was at Crash Live, for example, as well, I can tell you that on the day, everything looks perfect. Everything runs really well. But, 10 minutes before they start, it's all held together by gaffer tape and, and I think pretty much everything in life is a little bit like that sometimes, It's like just before the guests arrive, you get the food on the table, but before that, it's chaos, right? So it's probably almost inevitable, especially with deadlines and everything, that these little things creep in, right? And they don't notice them because they don't have enough time to really test them until they go out in the field. And, but it's amazing that something like this would turn up, 40 years later, 30, 35 years later? I'm not sure, but yeah.
I do find it interesting in terms of emulation showing that it's still not quite the same as working on the metal. Sometimes for better, and sometimes for worse. But this is a case of it sort of highlighting a bug in the background. But I don't mind emulation at all. Absolutely love it because it opens up a world of can't collect everything right. But in the back of your mind, there's always that, but should it run this fast or should it run this slow? Or is that exactly what it should sound like? And, maybe it's not always correct.
In other tales of the unexplained, Rhetorica submitted a link about the 1988 Mystery of the Haunted Amstrad, a video presented by Nostalgia Nerd. Now, this one seems to have unlocked a range of spooky mysteries of classic computers, such as the Dodleston messages, which I believe Allan was especially hoping that we would talk about today. What piques your interest about the Dodleston messages?
Oh, I just love ghost stories anyway. Like growing up, always big fan of Hammer House of Horror and all that kind of thing. So I like the idea of technology mixing in with ghosts, but of course, it's it's obviously a hoax, isn't it? I mean, it's very clearly that when you read the messages, the text is like the sort of it's I think they call it Hollywood ancient. It's like the way that we think old people in the ancient times used to speak, but those. I mean, again, I'm going to sound like the resident historian. I mean, I did study history, but that language is a mixture of Elizabethan English and Chaucer and stuff from the Bible, which is basically the stuff that we studied at school, right? And that's why we think that it's that language. But when exposed to an analyst, the language that the ghost was speaking was like a mixture of those, and it was nothing to do with 16th century language at all. It was like just very clearly a hoax. And I think the woman involved they suspect it might have been her because she was alone with the computer quite often, and it coincided. So yeah, but that's an older video, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll come back to the Dodleston messages in a minute, but this 1988 Haunted Amstrad is about a haunted Amstrad 1512. He says 1512, but hang on. Let me deal with the numbering first. He says 1512. It's clearly 1512, but anyway, if you need a reminder, the Amstrad 1512 was a 512K IBM PC clone running on an 8086. It's widely credited with helping popularize the PC clone in the UK in the late 1980s. So the spooky stuff on the 15 dozen takes place at a persistently unnamed architectural firm in Stockport in the greater Manchester area. And this computer does spooky things. It glows when it's not on or not plugged in. Why would an office computer not be plugged in? Whatever. It turns itself on, it groans, so forth.
Well, the groaning, it was like a zombie. It was like the zombie sound from Resident Evil. Did you hear it? It was great. Yeah.
So this tale gets a bit of newspaper exposure, which certainly would not be the first time a hoax is featured in the newspapers. Now, Amstrad PC Magazine's Ken Hughes, and I'm going to come back to that in a second, but Amstrad PC Magazine's Ken Hughes allegedly records video proof of these wild deeds. Now, it's later discovered in the video he's the features editor of Personal Computing with the Amstrad PC rather than Amstrad PC Magazine. There's a whole sidebar in here where basically he goes through dozens of different Amstrad publications. It's amazing. Also, there's a Ken Webster involved in the Dodleston messages thing. So there is something about these guys named Ken. Anyway, this haunted Amstrad gets taken to the May 1988 Amstrad Computer Show, about which there's really only some like mildly grumbling reports in various Amstrad magazines. And again, there were a lot of those, but nothing really about this big haunted computer. The August 1988 issue of the Games Machine magazine, which is linked to in the video's footnotes, takes on the tails, makes a pretty clear case. Database Publications, which both published, well, this Amstrad magazine, and also put on the Amstrad Computer Show, had been sending out press releases about this haunted Amstrad. Then they decided to make it a centerpiece of the show, which contemporary reporting says came in well under attendance expectations. Anyway, Nostalgia Nerd does a lot of research, and he gets the right person on the phone, Peter Brameld, who was then, in 1988, the marketing director for Database. And Peter Brameld comes right out and says, oh yeah, it was a PR stunt. It was cooked up by Ken Hughes at the guidance of marketing consultant Mike Cowley, sorry. So there's that. So the story gets cracked because Nostalgia Nerd kept digging for sources, and he eventually chanced upon an octogenarian who was willing to take his call and had apparently perfect recall of these events. Not to put too fine a point on this, but those tricks will not be possible forever. So I say this to us and to all of you out there, ask those questions now of people who were doing interesting things 35, 40 years ago, because they will not be here forever. Any unsolved mysteries you guys would like to hear sorted out before the perpetrators can no longer answer the phone? Allan?
Well, actually, what I was going to say was that, I did this talk at Crash this year and last year, and what I enjoyed about the video was watching him go through that process of trying to find these guys from, 30, 40 years ago who have left the scene, retired, and so on. And it's very similar when you're trying to find coders, who wrote the games that you remember, and especially if you're going to do a talk. So Bob Hamilton, for example, he wrote a game called The Pyramid, and he hadn't been in the scene for nearly 40 years. And I managed to track him down. And he appeared at Crash. He was absolutely blown away. He couldn't believe that there were sort of 400 or 500 people who were kids at the time and now in their 50s, just absolutely loving him, wanting him to sign stuff. And he had such a great time, And as you said, Jason, that's that lived experience, the guys who were there at the time who can really tell you about what it was really like and what happened. So, I enjoyed the fact that he just didn't give up. He was very dogged, wasn't he, Peter, on Nostalgia Nerd, to track that guy down. And that's kind of what you have to do when you're looking for these guys. So that's the thing I wanted to add to that, really, yeah.
I remember in the early 90s, dance music, KLF, I don't know if they made it across to the USA. The KLF took their proceeds, £1 million, and they burnt it. They burnt £1 million in a massive statement, publicity thing, whatever you want to call it. There was a documentary made of it. There's bank records showing them withdrawing £1 million. People found partially burnt £50 notes. Bill and Jimmy said they did it, and they said they regret it. And I still don't believe it happened. I still don't believe the KLF burnt that money. So I still hope that they're going to come out at some point and say, okay, just before we slip off, we want to tell you, yeah, it's a hoax. We, of course, didn't burn the money. We burnt about £5,000 worth to make it look like we did.
Were they Scottish, Dave?
Yes.
Oh, then they definitely
That's the answer. Yeah.
They definitely didn't burn it then.
The Gremlin, that just reminds me about Gremlin, because you might remember Monty Mole, and they managed to get the game on the 9 o'clock news because they connected it to the miners' strike and Arthur Scargill, and that was a mostly a publicity stunt cooked up by Ian Stewart, and it really did work for them. They had more coverage than they could possibly have hoped for.
Nice.
Chris?
Yes, me. Yes, no, there's definitely some people I want to contact out there. What I want somebody with a large channel to interview whoever coded the original PC, ST, and Amiga ports of Outrun. And I want answers, and I want an apology.
The ST version was fine, and there was no point doing an Amiga version. Nobody had one.
Thank you for hijacking this into This Week in Outrun content. All right. So yes, Doddelson Messages out there was an earlier hoax, which was nonetheless peaking in the late 1980s when the perpetrator, Ken Webster, published a book accounting for these strange messages popping up on his humble BBC Micro. And there's a lot of both contemporary and this, as Allan was saying, this kind of weird hybrid fakey stuff. But I did like this one that appeared to be in more contemporary English. True are the nightmares of a person that fears. Safe are the bodies of the silent world. Turn, pretty flower, turn towards the sun, for you shall grow and sow. Oh, and it goes on and on.
You could do that all day, couldn't you?
I could. I really shouldn't, though. This is going to be the first 3-hour episode of This Week in Retro.
We want to get Shakespeare Jason on.
We can. There's.
Well, this is the only chance you're going to get, probably.
Gotta get
16th century ghost writing. Yes.
Oh, it's coming now. It's coming now. Jason, read the next bit out in Shakespeare.
Yeah. But this is like Alan was saying, this is more that kind of Chaucer, mashup
It's
thing.
an anachronism, isn't it?
Me think you're a history book that has its front and back skin joined via each side. It's. Yeah.
Maybe we should do the whole podcast like that, Verily didst thou speakest of this, just put
Lord British on.
TH at the end of it. Well, that's it, isn't it? It's like that Lord British language that Americans. Now, I'm not including Jason in this, but Americans think that that's how British people spoke at that time,
Yeah.
Ye olde, whatever.
Anyway, my big takeaway from all this spooky stuff is that I think that Dave, Chris, and I would make pretty good Ghosts of Christmas Past, Present, and Future in an extremely nerdy and extremely middle-aged production of A Christmas Carol.
On to housekeeping. I'd like to welcome 3 new patrons in. So welcome to William, welcome to Charlie, and welcome to Damien. Thank you very much for signing up to become official twirlers. If you wanted to do that, where would you go, Chris?
You would go to patreon.com/This Week in Retro. No art.
And we got a review. We're always asking you to leave reviews for the podcast to help it spread. So we got a review. Thank you for doing that. The review is titled Almost Perfect, so it's probably for the wrong podcast. As someone who started...
Absolutely. No. It's not titled
absolutely perfect.
Absolutely.
Definitely wrong then.
That's not us then. No.
But it goes on to describe the podcast, so they must have the right one.
Yeah, I think
As someone who started on a ZX80, then ZX81 through VIC-20 and then Atari ST, I have maintained a strong interest in retro games and computers. I've listened to many retro podcasts, but this one is way ahead. Content and presentation is extremely well done and caused me to go to Patreon to give proper recognition of all the passion and effort put in by the presentation team. Well done. That's quite humbling, in fact. Yeah. And it's not the only thing that we've had this week that's come in that's been quite humbling. There's a post on Reddit. It says, just to thank you. I have been through a very tragic year. I am mostly housebound at the moment, but I have listened to every show, and your upbeat and genuine dynamic and love of all things retro has lightened my days. I miss the 80s, and I love to listen to the shared memories we have of those who lived through it. Keep up the good work, guys. Merry Christmas. Bit early, maybe, but yeah, I don't know what to say to that. That makes all this worth it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Patrons will have had a new episode to listen to, a patron special that came out on last Wednesday. This Week in Retro 260 weeks ago. And just for clarity in what we said last week, there will be a 2-week break, as we do every year, at the end of the year after the Christmas episode. So you've got this one, you've got the one after, you then get the Christmas special, and then you've got a 2-week break, which will give you a little bit more clarity than the chaos at the end of last.
I thought it was crystal clear. Alan?
Oh, I just wanted to say that, the charity thing that we're doing in Movember, it's a really, it does a lot for men's mental health. And just what you were saying there, Dave, I think you guys should be appreciated, because a lot of guys our age struggle with mental health more than people realize, because we tend not to talk about it. And there's a lot of loneliness and isolation and various things like this. And podcasts like this that you guys do, they really actually help. They really do help people to feel like they've got a place in the world and a little more purpose, and a chance to be part of a community, and it's a really good thing. So yeah, good job, guys.
Well, thank you. On to news and briefs. And Udo Kier, star of Red Alert 2 and Hideo Kikomo's OD, has passed away aged 81. Thank you for letting us know, Dr. Local. If you need your memory jogged, he played Yuri in Red Alert 2.
Scappergoat42 lets us know you can play Hitchhikers in your browser on a fancy BBC site that they created years ago. So we'll throw the link in the show notes.
Technic UK links us to a Tom's Hardware article on creating a perforated tape reader from scratch. Apparently, the gimmick is it'll read as fast as you can steadily pull it through the reader. And then there's one from Happy Coding as well.
Yeah. So, Happy,
Yes.
or Allan as he's known, sometimes Happy, sometimes Allan. Does that mean you're only sometimes happy? The question of the week got you thinking about the number of platforms, number of active game platforms in 95 and 96. Now,
Yeah.
I know the number because I've read the post. Chris and Jason, have either of you read it? You know what the number is? If you don't know, would you like to take a guess at how many active platforms that Allan said there are?
Active gaming platforms.
Yeah.
Where you could
Unix
actually
95.
buy a commercial game for that platform at that time and play it on that platform, that had been released in that year.
Yeah, I read the
Nice.
post, so I remember the vibe of it.
Yeah. So I know, I read it as
So
well.
you're on the
Yeah,
spot, Chris.
told you.
Yeah.
I'm on
I
the
read the
guess.
subreddit, I back the Patreon. Come on, Chris, catch up.
95, 96,
Computers and consoles. Yeah, formats, different formats.
Yeah,
of games,
okay. Let me just do some counting in my head. Hang on.
Including in
Not
Japan,
that.
that you could import as well.
Oh, in Japan as well. Oh, far out. Then I'm just going to throw a number in the air. I don't know, 25.
That's not bad.
Higher.
Higher,
yeah.
really? Wow.
Yeah. 32.
Far out. I wasn't far off then. That's not bad.
And Sega, that was mid-90s, that's peak Sega. They had 8 different active machines at that time.
Wow.
Because they had the Master System, the Mega Drive, and the Sega CD and the 32X and the Saturn. They were all out at the time, and the Master System was still supported in Brazil, and they had the Sega Pico, which is like an educational thing, and crazy.
I think
Wow.
the numbers could certainly be argued on, but I think the basic point is we had all this diversity in platforms in 1995, and now what do we have? PC, Switch, PS5, and Xbox.
Xbox, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't even
that's
know what
it.
it's called.
Changes over time. Like in the early 80s, there was huge numbers of computers as well, right? And then they all kind of merged as well. But yeah,
And
it's a great
Spectrum
time.
next.
And collecting in the mid 2000s was great because you found so many different consoles while you were scouring the boot sales, But
If you want to read more than what we cover in the show, if you want to hear about other things, if you want to submit your own stuff for us to cover, if you want to answer the question of the week, you would go to our subreddit, which Jason's going to give you the URL for.
Reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro.
Well, now, thanks to Piero75 for sharing with us a video by Tech Tangents, it's time to revisit a topic as old as the sun. One that seems to divide opinions and communities over and over again. It's retrobrighting. So basically, Tech Tangents is giving his thoughts on the process based on revisiting an item that was retrobrighted 10 years ago using the hydrogen peroxide cream method. He does discuss other methods that he's tried, including ozone, which I wasn't aware of, never heard of that one. But he didn't really get that to work very well for him, despite spending a heap of money on his setup. What he doesn't cover is vapor brighting, which is the only method I've used, and we'll talk more about that later when we break into a discussion. So back to the video. 10 years ago, he retrobrighted a Sega Dreamcast, and he only applied the cream to the plastics that showed yellowing. Some surfaces were still quite white, so he left those alone. What he shows in this video is that despite initially pleasing results that he got, not only have those surfaces yellowed again, but they seem to have yellowed faster than the untreated areas that have now begun to naturally yellow with age. So they appear to have degraded faster, the areas that he treated. Now, given the title of this video, I thought this was going to be about the plastics becoming more brittle, because it was basically saying retrobrighting damages plastics. But that's not what he's discussing here. He touches on that, but he says he's got no evidence that that's, a thing. So, as I've said before, old plastics break anyway. They just do. So it's more about damaging, as he sees it, the molecular structure of the plastics in a way that makes them age faster, kind of, maybe. At least that's what I gleaned from the video. And as someone pointed out in the comments in our Reddit, a sample size of 1 is not a very big sample size at all to be making big statements on, right? But, and I think this is fair enough, Tech Tangent said that based on his experience, he would never recommend retrobrighting. And I get that, which I'll come to in a minute as to my reasons behind that. But guys, have you done any retrobrighting through any method whatsoever? What are your findings and your thoughts? Jason?
Yeah, my leading thought is like, surely this is settled science. Like, I know that there are a lot of different ways to make plastics, but like these were things that were documented, that were done on purpose. And it legit may be that the material scientists, perhaps English is not their first language, perhaps they're not engaged in these communities, perhaps people haven't doggedly tracked them down, a practice that we've talked about in this episode. But there have to be answers on this. That said, I don't trust myself to do any of this stuff correctly, so I don't bother. I'm okay with having yellowed computers. I comfort myself with by kind of mapping it to that recent meme, where the son asks, "Father, how would we make computers so yellow brown as this one?" And the father tears up and says, "We can't. We don't know how to do it." I'm fine. I'm fine.
I love it. It's funny you say about the plastics, though. The science should have been done on the plastics because, talk about Commodore alone. It really does seem to be what year was that particular Amiga made? What batch was it? What part of the world was it made as to whether or not it yellows at all, right?
But this is an industry. It would have trade journals. It has people who have, master's degrees and doctorates and stuff like that. People know how to do this stuff. They made these recipes to create these polymers on purpose. They could tell you.
It only mattered for the first couple of years. Beyond that, they wouldn't care. So they said, put a bit of that in. It doesn't matter how much. It'll work fine.
No, I totally understand how it happened. To your point, they didn't care. They didn't care if it would become brittle 30, 40 years or turn yellow. But now that it has, they should be able to tell you, like, oh, well, yeah, don't do that. That will make this far worse. I can tell you this because I know how the molecules work. Like, somebody and somebody's knows this stuff. How this happened makes total sense. That
we should ask new Commodore.
Yeah, we'll get right on that.
Allan?
Well, I was going to say that I think, I've never done anything like that. I used to have a lot of machines and I didn't do anything like that myself. But obviously, I think the reason is people want to get this feeling that they've got this brand new console like it looked on the very first day when they got it in the shop and all that stuff. But and I understand why people do that, and absolutely fine, But I also think I'm going in history again, but you guys seen the Antiques Roadshow, right? When they look at old furniture and all of this stuff. And usually what happens is at some point they'll say, well, yeah, this thing was worth a lot of money, but, it was made 200 years ago. But about 100 years ago, someone decided they wanted to restore it. And unfortunately, that means it's only worth 20 quid now because they've totally ruined the patina and it's all gone and it's like this, So I do wonder if, when we've all long since shuffled off our coils, the people will be looking at these machines and saying, "Oh, he's retrobrighted it. It's worth nothing now." So I don't know.
Yeah, maybe
we should think of it as a personal. This is just my personal view, but yellowing, it's a natural thing. It's like going bald. You just got to roll with it, right? What are you going to do? Retrobrighting's sort of like a wig, isn't it? In a way, right?
Maybe, yeah.
Don't bother. Yeah. But whatever floats your boat, I understand why people like that and want to show it off, especially when they take it to exhibitions and stuff. But, we've got museums and people who really look after these machines. So I think we'll be all right.
I have given it a go. So I did a little bit of vapor brighting once I learned that was a thing. And I did my A1200 and I did a Trojan light phaser about a year after that. And the results were great, right? It went from, looking fairly yellow. In fact, the Trojan light phaser was more of a brown. I really didn't think it was going to work, but it did. It brought it back up to, factory original colors, I think. But the A1200 at least went yellow again fast. I'm talking, I reckon it yellowed maybe within 1.5 years and possibly worse than it was before. So that's my issue with it. Dave?
Loads to see here. Let me try being succinct as I can. I've done it the vapor way before. We talked about this last 3 years ago on this show. Episode 93, we talked about it. My opinion hasn't changed. Neil, at that point, had just started doing the vapor bright way. It was Simon Locke that came up with it. And there's a video from Macho Nacho that covers Simon Locke's method of doing it, the vapor brighting way. He'll tell you how to do it. Neil liked it at the time. I spoke to Neil about it this morning. Neil that used to be on this show, Neil still likes using vapor brighting. I did it on my Mega ST keyboard. I did it on my Mega STE keyboard first. I did it on the Mega ST keyboard. The Mega ST keyboard is expensive and rare, and I wanted to make sure I did it right. I was delighted with the outcome. Vapor brighting is where you put hydrogen peroxide in the bottom of a container and you put the item supporting in it and you put it in the sun, and the vapor from the hydrogen peroxide does the retrobrighting. It's much smoother, it has a better outcome. But what we learned from Shelby's video here, what he's shown is what I think we already know. It's just more evidence that the sun by itself will cause further yellowing. So if you use the sun or if you use a grow light to do any form of retrobrighting, you're going to get some kind of backlash in terms of yellow. Now, that doesn't mean it's not worthwhile doing it. You can still do it that way, but try and minimize it. Let the chemicals do it. Let the sun activate the chemicals and let the chemicals do it rather than let the sun do it. And the type of retrobrighting that I think people shouldn't do, I don't like it. It's controversial for me to say this. People don't like me saying it, is sunbrighting. Don't do sunbrighting. People say, I want to do sunbrighting because it doesn't use chemicals. It's safer. No, you're putting the thing out in the sun for a week. You're going to turn it brown.
I mean, I don't know too much about the chemistry of this, but once you've retrobrighted your machine, you're probably likely to want to put it on display, right? So it's exposed to daylight rather than having a cover on it. Or I don't know if that helps, right? But maybe if you just bring it out when you play it and then you put it back in a box, or you get a cover to stop the sunlight getting to it, does that have an impact? Or
I think putting it in the sun, it will start the browning, and the browning will take a long time to happen. So you put it out in the sun, like I did with, I put a 4G antenna on the inside of a window facing the sun, and I put it there for about 6 months, and I took it off, it wasn't brown. I put it in a crate in the loft, and when I took it down, the side that had faced the sun was dark yellow. The side that had faced inside was still the original colour. So the sun had unlocked this browning that happens. But I do want to say, I'm not, like Chris, I'm not so happy with the video title. There's nothing here about damaging the plastics, but maybe that's just because we're still thinking about Polymat's video where he takes LGRs, smashed up laptops, and shows the plastic is riddled with cavities and that's why it broke. I was expecting something about making the plastics more brittle, but Shelby doesn't mention that at all. Yeah. But I've added a link to Macho Nacho's video from 2022 on vapor brighting, which is a great video to watch. But yeah, I'm still sold on retrobrighting with vapor brighting. And Neil says he's the same as well, talked about this morning. And now that he's settled in the pump house, when he goes back to do more retrobrighting, he will use the vapor brighting method. Sorry.
I went for vapor brighting because I saw that as the less risky in terms of if you put the cream on wrong, if you're doing that, you're going to get marbling. That's a thing, you know. So that's why I went for it. It just seemed a lot easier, and knowing how haphazard I am with these things. Someone else on the Reddit, actually, it might be the same guy, actually. They commented on the story and said, essentially, who cares if I have to repeat it every 10 years? And that's fair enough. But for me, every 2 years, no thanks. I mean, something that's low effort, like a Trojan light phaser, 3 screws and it's the thing's apart. Maybe I would do it, but an entire A1200 and pulling every single key off the keyboard, no, it's just not going to happen for me. So I think for me, the whole thing comes down to it's a personal thing. Unless it gets proven that we're actually degrading the plastics and we are making them more brittle, that's something to consider. But until that's proven, I just see this as a preference thing. There's no right or wrong. It's an opinion, and, do whatever makes you happy. Alan?
Yeah, well, I agree with you, Chris. I mean, and, these machines, some of these machines at least, are not really as rare as we kind of imagine them to be. There are still thousands of them around. You can still experiment with these things. But I just wanted to say with what you said, Dave, I mean, this vapor brighting method, it's also a lot better for people in Northern Europe where they don't get as much sun, maybe, and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So, it's just a kind of gentler method, but takes a bit longer. Is that the?
Yeah, it's more reliant on chemicals, and I say the sun's the enemy here. You put it in the sun, it will go brown later. So if you're using the sun, use the minimum amount of sun, the maximum amount of peroxide, the strongest you can to get it done, rather than sunbrighting, which I think is the issue. But I don't think there's any money to pay for the science that's needed to get a definitive answer here. So I think we're stuck with anecdotal evidence.
I imagine Jason and Chris get a lot more sun than you and I do, especially in the winter.
Yes.
Definitely
Yes.
get sun. Yeah.
Wisconsin, not known for being sun-soaked exactly, but yes,
No.
it was,
No, actually, Kazakhstan is like 40 degrees in the summer, to be fair. So, yeah. But
no, we do.
Anyway.
It's time now for this week's community question of the week. No, last week's actually. We'll do that one first. And the question was, you've still got the month of December left. What retro tech project are you still hoping to get to in 2025? And I'm giggling because I'm wondering how many people have said, oh, I'm going to retro bright all my stuff, and now we've just put them off. Let's hope that's not the case. We're out of contest mode, aren't we?
Yep.
Right. Actually, Alan, do you want to read out the top one?
Well, I'll read out Pajako because he's always there, isn't he? And a shout out to Paul. Sorry you didn't make it to Crash, and I hope you're feeling better now. Pajako says, look shiftily over at the pile of unfinished projects. None I got done. I'm totally on top. So of my retro projects. Okay, maybe the Jupiter 8 Repro needs a little more work, like the key switches soldering on, and the EPROMs need burning, and I need to plug in the chips. Did I finish the soldering the chip sockets? Challenge accepted. Even if the thing doesn't boot, I can get it done.
Nice. No retro brighting for him. Dave?
Vegetable Message 22 says, there is still hope for the Commodore 64 Ultimate to arrive. I believe there is still hope. There's some coming out before Christmas.
If you're scoring at home, Vegetable Message was top. Pajako was third, which means that in second place was John McD 3482. Finished cleaning out and organizing my garage, so I actually have a place to work on my projects. I'm tired of balancing everything on the keyboard shelf of my computer desk. I learned the other day, solder hurts when it hits your crotch. Can't top that, John.
What? Ouch.
I did burn myself with soldering this week. Soldering iron accidentally touched my hand. You can just see the burn mark there.
No, that's not good.
Didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. It sizzled.
Not as much as it hurt John.
It sizzled.
Nice. I'm having a quick scroll and I can't see any sign of retro brighting, so I think we're good. We haven't offended anybody this week.
So, Chris, I wanted to say, do you remember last year, this is December now, and you were talking about being creative and you were trying to come up with a rhyme for 2025 because you had Play More 24 and then it never really happened? Well, listen, I got one for you. New tricks in 26.
That's a good one.
There we go. Learn a new trick in 26.
That could mean
Old
anything.
dogs, new tricks, right?
No, that's good. Yeah. We should roll with that.
Go for it.
Hashtag
I want to see all of you learning something new on your computer.
Should we
learn
maybe
some new
make
tricks? Let's see. That's what I'd like to see. Yeah.
We'll do it in the Christmas episode.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, do
Give
that
people
one for
time
the
to
Christmas
prepare.
episode. Yep. There you go. So, which means this week's question of the week is, what's your favorite joystick? And do you hold it in your hand or do you like to smash it on the desk and keep it there? And where would they go to answer that question, Dave?
They would go to our subreddit, reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro, where you can submit the answer as well as submit some things for us to talk about and have a browse if you're having a crafty log, for example. So thank you very much for joining us this week, Happy. Again,
my pleasure.
Plug the Midnight Brew.
Yes, midnightbrewgames.com. It's for charity. And we also have physical box sets, which are not for charity. They're for profit. But still, they're very good.
Charity or profit, your choice. We will see you next week. And unlike last week, we're going to wave this week. Bye.
You insist.
Bye.
Jason's
I like
waving.
it my
Chris
way.
is waving.
Unless
My
I
way will
crash
return.
again.
I'm doing
I haven't
jazz hands.
crashed.
You know.
Alan is waving twice.
Bye.
This Week in Retro was written and presented by Chris from 005 AGIMA, Jason from the Retro Adventurers, and Dave. It was edited by me, Duncan Styles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcast app, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/thisweekinretro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. Please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.
I think that Dave, Chris, and I would make pretty good Ghosts of Christmas Past, Present, and Future in an extremely nerdy and extremely middle-aged production of A Christmas Carol.
I'd pay to see it.
That's the doorbell.
Off you go, Dave.